The darkness over the Strait of Hormuz at 0207 hours was absolute. No moon, no horizon. A thin overcast at 4,000 feet erased starlight, leaving a flat, blind sky. A low-pressure system moving in from the Gulf of Oman pushed sea state to 2-meter swells, irregular and chaotic. The chop disrupted acoustic profiles, degrading passive sonar with thermocline layering, biological noise, and microbubble scatter. Surface water temperature, 21.4 degrees Celsius. Below the thermal cline, which sat at approximately 87 meters, it dropped sharply to 14.1 degrees, a hard acoustic boundary that bent, reflected, and swallowed active sonar pulses like a hall of mirrors. It was, by any tactical assessment, a near-perfect operational environment for a submarine. 4 of them were already inside it. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy had been planning this operation for 19 months. Its internal designation was Tarak al-Sharaf, Path of Honor. The submarines were not the aging Kilo-class vessels of the regular Iranian Navy, nor the miniature Ghadia-class coastal boats that Western analysts had catalogued and largely dismissed. These were something newer, something that had been assembled in pieces, components sourced through intermediaries in Belarus, Malaysia, and the UAE, at a covered dry dock facility near Bandar Abbas that commercial satellite imagery consistently showed as inactive. The IRGCN called them the Zulfikar class. 4 boats, each displacing approximately 1,100 tons, submerged, fitted with air-independent propulsion systems of indigenous design. A closed-cycle diesel-oxygen arrangement that allowed sustained silent operation at 4 knots for up to 9 days without snorkeling. Their acoustic signature, when running on AIP at low speed, registered below 90 decibels, quieter than many fishing vessels, quieter than ambient biologics in this part of the Gulf. Each boat carried a crew of 31. Each boat was armed. The primary offensive load consisted of 4 Hoot-class super-cavitating torpedoes per vessel, reverse-engineered from the Russian VA-1111 Val, capable of 200 knots through a gas bubble envelope, and 6 NASA-3 Sekming anti-ship missiles, packed into vertical launch cells fitted into the sail structure. The combination was not accidental. The torpedoes were the killing blow. The missiles were the distraction. Commander Reza Tamasbi, aboard the lead boat Zulfikar 1, had positioned his 4 submarines in a coordinated diamond formation across the strait's western channel at 2200 hours the previous evening. They had crept into position over 6 hours, moving at 2.5 knots, hugging the 85-meter depth contour just above the thermocline boundary, exploiting it as an acoustic shield against any surface or aerial sensor sweeping from above. Each boat maintained strict electromagnetic silence. No active sonar, no radar, no radio transmission. Navigation was conducted entirely on preloaded INS, with periodic depth-referenced terrain correlation against a classified barometric chart, updated 4 months earlier. The target was USS Ronald Reagan CVN-76. The carrier had transited the Strait of Hormuz 17 hours earlier, entering the Persian Gulf as part of a scheduled presence operation following heightened regional tensions. She was accompanied by her standard carrier strike group, the Ticonderoga-class cruiser USS Chancellorsville, 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers USS Shoup and USS Milius, a fast-attack submarine in trail position, and a supply vessel. The group had been broadcasting its position through standard AIS transponders and had been the subject of international media coverage for 72 hours. Tamasbi had tracked her on passive sonar for 11 hours. The carrier's acoustic signature, the deep harmonic thrum of 4 A4W reactors driving 4 shafts. The cavitation noise of her propellers at 15 knots was unmistakable. He knew her speed, heading her approximate position to within 400 meters. He had been patient. At 0217, the formation reached optimal geometry. Zulfikar 1 and Zulfikar 3 were positioned ahead of the carrier's track, 2,100 meters apart, sitting at 78 meters depth, weapons ready. Zulfikar 2 was 1,800 meters to the south, angled for a broadside shot on the carrier's port beam. Zulfikar 4 held position 2,400 meters northeast, covering any course deviation to starboard. The firing solution on Reagan was triangulated from 3 independent bearings at a closure rate that accounted for the carrier speed. Weapons impact was calculated at 94 seconds from launch. Thomasby checked his firing clock. He authorized the missile cells to warm up on passive standby, a process that generated no detectable electromagnetic emission. Tube doors on the torpedo systems were already open, flooded, equalized with sea pressure. He raised his right hand, held it, waited for 0220. On the bridge of USS Ronald Reagan, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Ayonkwo had the 0200 watch. The carrier moved through the southern Gulf at 16 knots. A city of 5,000 personnel suspended on 100,000 tons of steel. The flight deck was dark, with only 2 E-2D advanced Hawkeye aircraft spotted on the bow catapults for alert launch. Their folded wings latched, their APS-145 radar systems in standby warm. 12 FA-18E Super Hornets sat armed in the hangar bay, 2 designated as 5-minute alert fighters with pilots in their ready rooms. The operational picture, as reported by the Sioux plot 2 levels below, was routine. Surface traffic in the strait was light. 3 commercial tankers tracked and correlated, 1 fishing dhow cluster at bearing 190, a UAE Coast Guard patrol vessel south of Abu Musa Island. Nothing unusual. The threat board showed orange on general posture, elevated as it had been for weeks, but no specific intelligence indicated imminent action. In the Combat Information Center of USS Chancellorsville, the A/SPY-1B radar was painting the sky in a 500 nautical mile radius with continuous rotating energy. The link picture was clean. Underwater, the situation appeared equally calm. USS Charlotte SSSN 766, a Los Angeles-class fast attack submarine, was running in the carrier group's baffles, the acoustic shadow directly behind the carrier at 200 feet depth. Her A/BQQ-5E spherical array sonar listening in every direction. Her sonar suite was one of the most sensitive passive systems in the world, but the strait that night was acoustically complex. Merchant traffic noise propagating from the northern channel, biological layers of snapping shrimp congregating near the thermocline, and the carrier's own propulsion masking a significant rear sector. Charlotte's sonar supervisor, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb, was running a standard watch rotation. His towed array, the TB-29, a thin line array streaming 800 feet behind the boat, was oriented to port and starboard, designed to capture low-frequency tonals in the frequency range where quiet diesel electrics and AIP submarines lived. At 02, 8 hours and 43 seconds, something changed. Webb almost missed it. It was not an alarm, it was not a clear contact. It was a pattern, a micro-variation in the ambient noise field at 47 Hz, repeating at 3.2-second intervals, present on 3 array elements simultaneously. The computer's automated tonal detection algorithm had flagged it at confidence level 31%, below the standard alert threshold of 45%. Webb stared at the waterfall display. 31% was noise, 31% was biologics, 31% was a merchant's auxiliary generator 2 miles away. Except the interval was too regular, and it was coming from 280 degrees southwest, ahead of the carrier's track. He keyed his interphone. "Consonar, I have a possible weak tonal contact, bearing 280, frequency 47 Hz, confidence low. Recommend we go active on the flank array." The OOD hesitated for 3 seconds. Standard protocol for an active sonar ping in a commercial traffic area required tactical coordination. 3 seconds. "Sonar con. Concur. 1 ping. Flank array, standby. The AN/BQS-15 high-frequency active sonar pulse left Charlotte at 02:19 hours and 7 seconds. It traveled outward as an expanding pressure sphere through the warm upper layer of the strait, hit the thermocline boundary, refracted downward at an acute angle, and kept traveling not dead ahead, but along a convergence zone arc that curved beneath the thermocline and swept the lower water column in an expanding crescent. It found Zulfikar 3 first. The return was unmistakable, hard, geometric, non-biological. A 94 decel reflection from a steel hull 1,340 meters ahead, bearing 271 degrees, depth 79 meters. Half a second later, the same pulse found Zulfikar 1 at bearing 264 degrees, 1,890 meters. Then, on the return leg, the array processed a third anomalous return, from bearing 218 degrees, range uncertain contact, partially eluded by the thermocline boundary. Webb was already moving. Con-sonar, multiple submerged contacts, solid geometrics bearing 271, 264, and 218. These are submarines. I say again, multiple submarines forward of the formation. The Combat Information Center of USS Ronald Reagan received the report at 029 hours and 19 seconds. What followed took 41 seconds from initial report to battle stations. The carrier's 1MC general alarm sounded at 02119222, a single, flat digital tone. 3 cycles, followed by general quarters, all hands, man your battle stations, this is not a drill. Simultaneously, the tactical data link 16, pushed the contact data to every platform in the strike group in a 0.3-second burst. The E-2D Hawkeye on Cat 1 was spinning its engines before the alarm finished sounding. The first aircraft was airborne by 022104, climbing at 3,200 feet per minute. Its APS-145 radar in active search mode before the gear retracted. In the CIC of USS Chancellorsville, the A/SQ-89 combat sonar system now had 3 of the 4 contacts correlated from Charlotte's active data, cross-referenced with its own home-mounted sonar returns by 022130. A 4th contact had been localized. Zulfikar 4, hiding in the thermal layer's acoustic shadow at bearing 047, range 2,600 meters. All 4 submarines were now tracked, their positions updating every 4.2 seconds through the integrated sonar picture. USS Shoup peeled hard to port, accelerating to 30 knots. Her A/SQR-19 towed array deploying at speed. USS Milius broke right, pushing her bow into the sea state, her vertical launch system rotating to attack orientation. Both destroyers were running active sonar. Now the strait lit with acoustic energy as the strike group shifted from passive detection to active prosecution mode. The MH-60R Sea-Hawk helicopters, 2 from Chancellorsville, 1 from Shoup, were airborne within 4 minutes of the alarm. Each carried a dipping sonar system and Mark 54 lightweight torpedoes. They spread in a coordinated search pattern designated Bravo Delta, flying at 150 feet above the swells, dipping their sonar transducers at pre-calculated points that bracketed the 4 Iranian submarines, projected movement corridors inside Zulfikar 1. Tomasby heard the active pings, heard them from 3 directions simultaneously. His passive sonar operator was calling contacts, surface combatants accelerating, helicopters, the sustained howl of the American submarine's active system, painting them continuously. The geometry had collapsed. They had been found. He made the only decision the tactical logic allowed: immediate launch. Accept degraded firing solution, saturate the target with everything available. At 022241, Zulfikar-1 fired 2 Hoot torpedoes and 3 NASA-3 missiles in a 4-second salvo. The NASA-3 missiles broke surface 1,700 meters ahead of USS Ronald Reagan at 02:22:46 and immediately activated their active radar seekers, locking onto the carrier's massive radar cross-section. They never got closer. The carrier's A/SLQ-32V6 electronic warfare system identified the NASA-3 radar emissions at the moment of activation, frequency, waveform, pulse repetition interval, and responded within 180 milliseconds with a focused jamming beam that saturated the missile's seeker heads with coherent noise. 2 missiles immediately went ballistic, their guidance destroyed, and impacted the water 800 meters short of the ship. The 3rd missile broke lock momentarily, reacquired through its backup inertial mode, and was engaged at 400 meters by the carrier's Mark 115 Phalanx CIWS, the 20mm Gatling system, rotating at 4,500 rounds per minute. The missile was destroyed in a 0.6-second burst at 310 meters. The 2 Hoot supercavitating torpedoes were the more dangerous threat. At 200 knots, they were inside the traditional torpedo defense reaction window, but USS Charlotte had already been repositioned. The attack submarine had sprinted ahead of the carrier at flank speed the moment the contact classification was confirmed, placing herself between the torpedoes and their target. Her torpedo countermeasure system deployed 2 ADC Mark V expendables, acoustic decoys that replicated the carrier's propulsion signature at a louder amplitude. The first Hoot followed the decoy. The second Hoot lost its supercavitation envelope at 900 meters when its gas generator failed under the acoustic disruption created by Charlotte's own active countermeasures. The torpedo dropped to subsonic speed, lost guidance coherence, and ran out of fuel 200 meters from the carrier's hull, sinking harmlessly. Meanwhile, the helicopters had achieved weapons release criteria. At 022315, Seahawk Alpha dropped a Mark 54 torpedo directly over Zulfikar-3's position. At 022319, Seahawk Bravo dropped 2 Mark 54s in a bracketing pattern over Zulfikar-1 and Zulfikar-2's last known positions. USS Milius fired an ASROC, an anti-submarine rocket, at 022322, the weapon arcing 4.22 kilometers before deploying its Mark 54 payload directly over Zulfikar-4's position. The engagements were brief. Zulfikar-3 attempted an emergency blow and crash ascent. She broached the surface at 022408, half her ballast tanks empty, her propulsion running at maximum power. She was tracked on surface, radar by 3 platforms simultaneously. She transmitted 1 broken radio burst, 7 seconds of encrypted data before the second Mark 54 guidance system reacquired her in the shallow water and completed its run. Zulfikar-1, Zulfikar-2, and Zulfikar-4 attempted to dive below the thermocline and run south at maximum speed. None of them were faster than the weapons already in the water behind them. By 0231 hours, all acoustic signatures associated with the 4 contacts had ceased. The strait was quiet again. The chop of 2-meter swells, the distant thrum of commercial traffic, the steady rhythm of the carrier's 4 shafts pushing her forward at reduced speed while the perimeter was re-established. USS Ronald Reagan had not changed course. She had not been hit. She had not lost a single aircraft, sailor, or system. The entire engagement from first detection to terminal phase completion had taken 11 minutes and 47 seconds. No public statement was issued by the United States Navy or CENTCOM. In the days that followed, Iranian state media reported that 4 IRGC-N vessels had failed to return from a routine training exercise and that a search operation was underway. The searches were eventually called off. No wreckage was publicly attributed. The Strait of Hormuz reopened to commercial traffic the following morning at 0600 without delay, without incident. Somewhere in the corridors of naval intelligence, the incident was filed, classified, and archived. Another incident added to a ledger that never reaches headlines. No statements issued, no imagery captured, no trace left above the surface. The sea absorbs everything. Out there, the margin between stability and escalation can collapse to a signal spike, a fractional decibel shift, a contact classified at low confidence in a narrow time window. Decisions are made in seconds based on imperfect data, filtered through noise, thermals, and instinct. Encounters like this, if they are ever acknowledged, rarely appear as they happened. They're recorded, renamed, and buried in systems few will ever access.